Welcome to my humble little office. My name is wtith. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on October 20th, 2022 at approximately 10:56. No, my apologies. Approximately 12:56 p.m. PST. As you can tell, that didn't work as well as I would like. By the way, I am actually going to get my eyes checked tomorrow to see if we can do something about it. And other than that, I'm going to be taking a look at things and see what we can do about modifying the rules. And what I mean by the rules is the rules of what people have been taught. Okay, it really boils down to this. It is time that we take a look where society has come about the same as it did centuries ago. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Okay, take a look at the state the world is in right now. Now, I discussed this the other day about the way that people's humanity has failed. Okay, people have forgotten about community. There is so much that has been forgotten, that has been pushed aside in favor of instant gratification, of getting what you personally desire. Okay, now the reality of it is, when you're looking at reality, we start at the core root. You definitely have to start with you. Take a look at the world around you and ask yourself one thing. Okay, are you content with the way your world is right this moment, right here, right now? This is something that we all have in common. Okay, now ask yourself, once you've looked at that, ask yourself, should anybody else have happiness in their life as well? And the way you're treating people, the way you're interacting with companies, with businesses, with governments, the way you're talking about the people around you, is this the way you would desire them to remember you? Is this the way you would desire them to talk to you? Okay, if you have a business, okay, would you like if your customers came in and screamed at your staff and tore a strip off your staff? If the answer is no, then when you go into somebody else's business, and this is where karmic law comes into play. Okay, when you go into somebody else's business, do not make the mistake of tearing a strip off of their staff. Understand they are doing their job, okay, to the best of their ability. At least that's the theory. So you really have to look in the mirror first and ask yourself, are you doing things the way you should? Okay, the way that you feel other people should is more to the point. Now, one of these days, I'm going to figure this out. Okay, I'm trying something new here to see if it comes up. But honestly, it doesn't look like it's going to. Well, I've wasted enough time on that. Eventually it will. For the moment, I'll work with what I've got. Okay, so you start with you. Now, I've covered this in detail on many occasions. So we expand one step further and we take a look at your family. And I mean the people that are living in the same house you are, that you are responsible for. Okay, at this point, I'm not talking about roommates. I'm talking about you, that special someone, any children, any pets you have, the whole 9 yards. Are you treating them the way you desire them to treat you? Now, in most churches, most religious beliefs, they tell you, especially in the Christian belief, they tell you, honor your mother and your father. Well, let me ask you this. If you're not being honored, does it make sense that somebody would honor you? If you're not being respected, does it really add up that other people will respect you? And this is something you have to ask for you. To me, it doesn't make sense, which is why I came to the understanding of you must do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. When I'm dealing with anybody, it doesn't matter to me how they got to where they are in life. Everybody has their own talents. Everybody has their own skills. Okay. And I've never met a single soul that was actually perfect. Okay. Not a one. I've met a lot that are absolutely on the right path for them. Good afternoon, Chad. How we doing? Glad you showed up. When we take a look at the community, now, and of course, this applies everywhere, everywhere we go. And I know that people that are running their own podcasts know this. Okay, I don't need that. People that are running their own podcasts have exactly the same problem as physical businesses do. People come into the business and they start creating a problem. Now, if you run a business and you don't desire problems to be there, to be in the business, okay, if you would take a person that is causing a problem and remove them from the premises, whether we are talking a physical business or a virtual one, and rest assured, podcasts are a virtual business. Okay, when you're looking at writing stories, okay, that story is your business. Okay, and if you desire that story, there's all sorts of different reasons to do things. Okay, one of the biggest things, everybody in life likes to be recognized. Everybody I've ever spoken to, let me put it that way, would like to be recognized in a positive fashion. This is the critical factor that you have to look at. And when we talk about that, I saw somebody do this the other day. They claimed that they had a business of, okay, can we think about that first? They claimed to run their own podcast. They claimed to have their own live stream, and yet when they came into a given stream, all they did was talked about their stream, not about the topic. And if you're running a podcast and you go into somebody else's podcast, certainly mentioning you run one is absolutely the right move. Okay. Now, I have considered going in and changing my name, okay, to include the back end, to include the title of my books. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. But when you're going into a business, it's like I was out voting the other day. Okay, and we were going down to the polls and it said right outside, do not have any identification of your affiliation within this premises or within 100 feet of the premises. Okay, and the reason for that is in deference to where you are and in deference to the other people. Now, when we're talking about unity, you have to look at it. It's absolutely imperative. You look at the way you're treating other people in all walks of life. And make sure you're treating them in the way you desire to personally be treated. Because the reality is there's another karmic law there. Okay. Energy out, energy in. If you desire to be treated properly, if you desire to be treated in a positive fashion, then it is imperative that you treat other people in the same fashion. Okay. So we look at the family unit, the business that you're running. Are you treating the people that you're working with, that you're living with, in the way you personally desire to be treated? If the answer is yes, then carry on. Okay, if the answer is no, then it's time to really reassess the way you're doing things. Now, today's society has turned around and really focused on immediate gratification. They have focused on me. I desire this for me. Don't worry about the consequences. Now, if we look at the original North American Indians, okay, their original culture before the Europeans got involved, their original culture, and don't take my word for it, for pity's sakes, do your own research. Okay. Quite seriously, everything that I talk about, everything I say is my personal opinion. It is based on my personal experiences. This does not make it perfect. But from my understanding, from my memories and the discussions I've had, the original North American Indians, before the Europeans came over, had a philosophy in life. Okay. And that was, if we're going to make one change, if we're going to cut down a tree, we're going to look 7 generations down the road and see how that's going to be affected. Not what's going to happen when I knock that tree over today. What's going to happen? Good afternoon, Charlene. How you doing? What's going to happen in 7 generations. Now, for me personally, I don't know what they had in the way of generations, what they figured it at. Me, I take it 20 years, which means when I look at making an adjustment, I'm looking 114 years from now. Is that a good move? Is this something that is likely to work well? Now, here's a prime example of short-sighted maneuvering. Let's take all the trees out of this area. Let's clear this beautiful hilltop that's got lots of trees. We'll cut all the trees down and we'll put buildings up. Okay, now that's a great idea if you're looking to live in the buildings. But what isn't thought about is what happens the moment you start getting rain in those mountains. With the trees gone, the entire root structure that is holding the trees, and by the way, holding the dirt in place, is gone. Now we start adding water because nobody looked that far down the road. We start adding water over years and years and years. And net result, those beautiful homes you built below that tree and that hillock, those beautiful homes are buried in mud. Now, who's to blame? Mother Nature? No, but thanks for playing. Okay, mankind looked at it and went, I want to build a house right where those trees are. And I'm going to cut everything down to start with. Everything above it, because, I can't see over that horizon. Well, the trees were there for a reason. And it wasn't just to interfere with your view. But when you start doing that, what happens is those beautiful homes, those beautiful family dwellings that you built with the best of intentions, hopefully, okay, are no longer there because you didn't think far enough ahead to realize that the moment you remove those trees, and by the way, building a wall to stop that mudslide, well, in case you hadn't noticed, the mud doesn't slow down much for walls, hence why buildings end up buried. So we have to start looking at people and going, are we treating people the way we desire to be treated? Now, I have yet to have anybody, and I've asked multiple times, for somebody to give me one example of why somebody's skin color or their gender makes them different or worth more than the next person. Okay, now the fact that it's always been that way doesn't add up. Good afternoon, Sue. How are you doing? Glad you can make it. I have never found anybody that their skin color makes them more valuable. People talk about, it's all these immigrants that drive like idiots. Okay, you know what? Skin color doesn't make for stupid drivers. Okay, gender doesn't make for stupid drivers. I will tell you the one thing that will make for complicated driving. My brother, he's passed away now, but he literally, when he was learning to drive, he drove a Chevy 2. Now, you guys may not know what it is, but he was literally so short, and we can go with that idea of how short was he. Well, he was 5'2". So on a Chevy 2, he would sit there on the seat and look between the top of the steering wheel and the dashboard to see where he was driving. Now, size does make a difference when you're driving. Okay. I mean, my dad went so far as to build blocks for him, from what I recall, so he could actually reach the foot pedals. Okay. Now, the thing is, when we take a look, and when we're looking at unity, you got to realize if somebody's doing the same job you're doing, okay, their gender has no bearing on it. If they're not physically capable of it, don't give them the job. But based on their skin color, whether or not they believe God is the all-powerful, whether they believe that Allah is, Shiva, it doesn't matter. Okay. It has no bearing on whether they can do their job. What does have a bearing on whether they can do the job is whether you, as the boss, as the employer, is going to take the time and say, yes, you're doing a good job, and here's how to do it a little better, or no, you're not doing a good job, but here's how you can improve. If you, as an employer or as a parent, is taking a look at what somebody is doing and saying, okay, I see what you're trying to do, so this is what you've got to do, okay, in order to make that work more effectively. But where we run into a problem is so many people, they look at the negative side. Now, I remember seeing one restaurant in particular where I went in, and as I come through the door, the manager grabbed one of the staff members, and I don't mean physically, but called them into the office, took them back into the office, and was gone for like 2 or 3 minutes. Okay. Now, took him into the office, came back out. There was a smile on the girl's face, and she went back to work. Okay, clearly she had done something wrong, but that was all I knew at the time. So he calls her in back, gives her, talks to her about the situation, sends her out. She goes back to work, goes back doing what she should have done. So I commented to the manager himself. And I told him, I said, that was a fantastic way of dealing with that. Absolutely happy to see that. I said, I've seen so many restaurants, so many companies where they don't do that, where service has gone right through the floor. You guys rank so far above them, right? And what did the manager do? Every staff member that was on the floor, he just called out to them across the entire restaurant. Socially, probably not acceptable. But he calls out at the top of his lungs or close to it, hey guys, way to go. Thanks for doing a great job. We just got a thumbs up from one of our customers. I could not have done this without you. Now, this is a thing we have to look at. Okay. You have to absolutely look at it and go, is what you're saying encouraging people, or is it making them feel like they are less than valuable? Okay, now let's not forget, I keep that sign behind me that says, I am worth it. So are you. So is everybody on the planet, everybody in existence, whether we are talking person, plant, animal, elemental, it doesn't matter what race, doesn't matter what species, okay, or what genus. Now, the reality is, we have been taught so much in the last number of years, and it's gotten really bad in the last 10 years, in my opinion, where people have really started looking at how to make themselves different from everybody else. How can we create a bigger separation to people? We're going to call it working towards world unity. We need to get along. We got to do better. So let's find a new and exciting way to make everybody feel like they're less important, like they are a smaller group, okay, like they are isolated. Let's work on that, because that always works for bringing people into a community balance. But, you look at it, and countries do exactly the same thing. Welcome on board, Angels of Life. How are you? The big thing when it comes to doing something, when it comes to telling somebody you're going to do something, it is absolutely critical you follow through with it. See, everybody does have free will. They've got freedom of choice. Okay. Now, the problem arises when people don't realize they've got the freedom of choice, or they don't realize what the other choice is. Now, I know this is going to upset people. Okay. And much of what I tell people upsets them. Okay, but it's like I've told people, I make every single individual I ever meet, I make every one of them happy. Some of them by showing up, most of them by going away. Now, the reality is, if you don't know you've got a choice, or there is no other option to choose from that leads to a different outcome, okay, if every choice you make goes however twisted and turned and crossed over it goes, it all goes to the same outcome, then this choice back here is an illusion. Okay, if no matter if there's no, if there is no difference in the outcome, if no matter what you do, the outcome is still going to be the same, okay, then frankly, it's not a free choice. But what you don't have freedom from is you don't have freedom from consequence. And this is the thing we have to look at. Okay, when you're looking at somebody, I heard it all the time growing up. I wore glasses most of my life. Right. In all fairness, in my case, I ended up starting to wear glasses because of a trailer hitched to the right eye. Not a fun experience. But the reality of it was this. I got called a lot of names growing up, and the most common one, I'm sure that many of you that have worn glasses for a long time had the same problem. People would call you four eyes, they'd call you geek, whatever. Okay, these are all terms to make somebody feel less valuable, less important. Now, I understand humans have a competitive nature. I also understand that most races out there do. Okay, but you've got to start looking. If we desire to turn this civilization around, okay. Now, in my opinion, my generation dropped the ball completely. The generation before me, okay, they fumbled it. But it was our generation that completely dropped the ball. And now it's our kids' generation, the next one coming up, that has to figure out how to pick up the ball, how to pick up and clean up the disaster we made. Because we're not going to straighten out, I don't know about you, but I've been contributing to the mess very as little as I can get away with. Well, I'm 59 now. Now, what do you figure? Do you think I'll be able to pull off another 60 years of life to undo everything that I've contributed to causing a problem for? I'm thinking probably not, but I am aiming to get, let's see here. Well, let me put it this way. I'm 59 now. I desire to see the 22nd century. Okay. Well, in order to do that, I have to reach the age of 137. Now, the odds are not good that I'm going to pull it off, but it's certainly not going to stop me from doing my best. But the generation coming up behind us, we've got to start reinforcing the idea that working together, we can make this a better world, for virtually everyone. But people have to realize if you're contributing to the problem, if you're making people feel less, for instance, if you are propagating this idea, you have to fear everything. Fear your neighbor, fear the government, fear the country next door, fear that person because he's the wrong color of skin. He's not the same match to you. Well, bad news. Okay. First and foremost, if we take a look at skin color, okay, there was an old saying years ago that, and I think it's still in the same saying still exists, that this particular type of people all look the same. Now, when I was growing up, I was almost completely colorblind. So I never saw the difference in tan skin and white skin. I knew of gray people, and there was one shade of black people that were they were almost inky black. So I knew they were black, and I knew albinos were white. Everybody else was varied shades of gray. Sounds terrible. It sounds like an old movie or like a movie that's on. Okay, except they only count 50. I'm telling you, there were a lot more colors. But let's get outside the idea of the black people being looking the same or all Orientals looking the same, and let's look at the reality. All Caucasians don't look the same either. Even everybody that has white skin, if you look at them, the pigmentation on their skin is different. The shape of their nose will be different. Every single one of you is an individual. Every single one of you is a unique person. Okay. Even if you take a look at hair color, okay, even when you take a look at hair color when somebody gets it dyed, you can get the exact same color of dye and it will show up different on each individual. That's because the pigmentation in each strand of hair is different. But we can keep looking at the differences. We can keep pointing out what is different, what is wrong. But let me ask you this. Is it really helping the society that you're watching crumble? And you can say, I don't see anything wrong with society. You can absolutely say that. Or we can go the idea of God's going to come down and clean it up. God gave you free will. He didn't give you freedom from consequence. Okay? And there is not an alien race species out there that's going to come down and straighten this mess out. That's up to you guys. And from what I've seen with many of the different species out there, okay, they've got the same problem. They've still got individuals. And every single individual out there has a unique approach. It is time to start celebrating that uniqueness, that individuality. My father used to put it really simple. He'd go, he'd turn around and go, it would be a really boring place if everybody on the world acted the same way. Now, we talk about this thing about, we desire a unified world. We desire the world to turn in a positive fashion. Okay. But the reality is, from what I've seen, many people desire the world to change. They're not happy with the patterns that are being laid down. Yet, most people are not apparently willing to change themselves. Okay. Now, the reality is, I'm looking at this and I'm betting dollars to donuts. Yeah, that's just terrible. Okay. See, I keep getting comments, and this is a complete sidetrack. Okay, I'm looking in the mirror right now, and I'm certainly not going to fix it. Not this moment. People have made lots of comments. I love the way my sideburns are. Oh, you know what? I've never paid attention to it. But when I've got a video here and a video here, okay, I can look at it, and I'll tell you, there is a very big problem here. This sideburn is down to here, and this one's up here. I don't know about you, but to me, this looks a little off. So I'm going to have to obviously remove some of this one to bring it up to balance. And I don't have a problem with that. Like I said, this is a problem I'm seeing, and I'm not about to go and fix it right now because, frankly, I don't know how to put this on hold. It's not that critically important. But if you're not happy with something in your life, it is absolutely critical that you turn around and start adjusting the energy flow. Start adjusting the way you're behaving. If you're not willing to do that, if people do not change on an individual level, we will not gain that unity of life. We will not gain unity. And do understand, for those of you that have this brilliant idea that unity means you're in a top position and you're telling people how to do things, okay, and everybody's listening to you, that's not unity. Okay, yes, we do, absolutely. I'm just reading this, the reality of it is, if we're looking at unity, okay, we have to realize that is done by pointing and by helping people understand there is a different way to walk. Okay, like this shirt, for instance. Okay, I'm not happy with it, but I've had so many other things to go, and this really boils down to an excuse, if you will. I could have gone down to Mark's Workwear World and gone shopping, but what did I do? Didn't bother. Okay. I'm not going to get a change in my wardrobe if I don't leave my house. Okay. And I do leave my house. I leave my house to go to the restaurant and to come home. I don't know about you, but I've yet to find a restaurant that actually sells clothing. Now, maybe in another country they do, but I just can't picture that working well. You have to look at, like, we have a choice, okay? You can either fear what's going on or you can love what's going on. And yes, there are variations on all of that. But if you're not content with the world you're in, you have to do something to change it. Now, I've made it very clear I don't really pay a lot of attention to politics. I was not happy with the way that our current local government was handling things. And I've already tried the political field myself and decided, no, I'm not running for office. I don't have the time or the inclination. I've already tried that road before. But I was the first one out the door to go to the polling station to vote. Okay, because that way I can say, okay, now I get to see, because I know who I voted for. Okay, and I know the ones that I voted for, I know which ones got into office. So I can sit there and go, yes, they're doing a good job, and now I can either back them up or I can vote against them the next time. But I went out of my way. Oh, I agree with you there wholeheartedly, Charlene. I actually became excessively reclusive 10 years before COVID hit. Okay, because I couldn't handle being around people like that. And my job, people phone in, and it's amazing how many people will call me up and go, I hate my life the way it is. I don't like the relationship I'm in. I don't like the job I'm doing. How do I deal with it? I'll turn around and go, here's a way to deal with it. And I kid you not, they'll sit there and they'll look at me and they'll go, but I don't want to do that. Well, if you don't like the way your life is, you have one of two choices. Either do something about it, and if you don't know how to, then by all means ask somebody. Okay, but there's a little more frustrating than somebody saying, I don't know how to do this. You tell them how I don't know what the problem is. You tell them what the problem is, they'll go, no, that's wrong. And I'm sitting there going, well, if you don't know what the problem is, how can you possibly know that's wrong? Now, I'm not always right by any stretch. Okay. I mean, I have voted in favor of of certain people getting into office that proved to be an absolute stupid maneuver. Okay. But once I know I've made a mistake, I will do what I can to correct it. One of the biggest things we have to look at when it comes to dealing with people, when it comes to working towards a unified world, we are not talking about when we talk about a one world government, we are not talking about a one person government. We're not talking about somebody sitting at the top of the totem pole going, everything I say is what happens. Okay, because I'm in this position, I can tell everybody what to do. Because the reality of it is this: if you grew up in real hot desert country, okay, you have no clue how to function inside a jungle environment. Okay, if you've grown up on the plains, you really don't know about the challenges that come from wildlife and what have you in the woods. Now, there is a similarity between growing up in the desert and growing up in the Arctic. Okay, there are similarities to it. But when we're talking a unified world government, we're talking about something where you have representatives from the different areas, from the different communities that are honestly putting their input in. The job of the guy at the head of the table is not to make all of the decisions. It's to ensure that all of the decisions take as much into consideration as possible. This is where society has really dropped the ball. Okay, in my own home as well, by the way. Okay, when people talk about it was so much simpler, 50 years ago. And it was in some ways, but it had its own problems. But the one thing they had right, when I was a child, the one thing that my parents did that was absolutely, irreplaceable. And I strongly encourage you all to do exactly the same thing. And with that in mind, I've got to talk to my own son to do this. Okay, take an hour, whatever it is for dinner, for one meal of the day, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or supper, doesn't matter. Okay, pick one meal of the day and do your level best to have everybody turn all the electronics off, your phones, the TV, the radio broadcasts. Okay, turn them all off. Okay, or put them out of reach so you can't hear them. And sit down and have a meal together. Get to know the people in your house all over again. And, if it's a family, that's great. If it's just roommates, it still holds the same way. Okay. The idea here is get to know the people you're around, get to know your neighbors, talk to them. These I don't have it here. These neat little problems, the cell phones and what have you, have absolutely the instant gratification, the distractions that keep showing up on them is absolutely phenomenal. Okay, put them down. Now, I'm not suggesting we get rid of technology. Okay, frankly, we get rid of technology no matter how much I complain about it. Okay, we get rid of technology. I won't be doing this, that's for certain. Okay, but you figure this out. Okay, where it came to, when I'm talking about follow through with what you're claiming. Okay, now you figure out there is something, and if something went sideways here. I've got a series of 12 books I'm in the process of writing, and we're not, that's the Yldrbacian Chronicles. Now, when I hooked up with this one company, they guaranteed me that they would put out 50,000 advertisements to qualified buyers of my books. Now, if you do the basic math, now this was 2 years ago. If you do basic math with 50,000 qualified buyers, I know all of them won't buy. Okay, but all the advertisers I've talked to have said the same thing. When you're doing advertising in that pattern, when you're doing flyer advertising, if you get a 2 to 3% return, you've done well. Now, with that in mind, at 50,000 50,000 qualified buyers, 50,000 flyers, if you will. Okay, that should have netted 500 sales. In 2 years, this company has produced 4 sales. That's it. Not 500, not 100, 4. Okay. Now, can I hold them responsible for it? No, but the fact that there are all sorts of other problems, is an issue. But where everybody I've talked to has said 1% return on these is a decent return. Okay. Then we have a problem here. Now, they made a claim. Clearly, they did not follow through with it, because what they claimed they could do has not even come close to the results that they promoted. Now, when I talk to people, I will tell people flat out, and you've heard me do it, I'm not the best. I am not the best there is. Okay, and I certainly don't desire you to take my word for everything. Do your own research. But if we are looking at turning this society around and stopping what happened, stopping the issue that happened, roughly 1700 years ago. No, wait a minute. Be about, if we go back, we're looking at 400, you're looking at almost 1800 years ago. Society buckled because people were being treated as less than the next person to them. This is happening all over again. Okay. And I look at the biggest mobilizers. You take a look at the religions. The religions and the politicians, in my opinion, are running pretty much neck and neck for the actual impact. Now, the major media moguls, I used to think they were causing the problem until social media hit. And then I found out something rather depressingly remarkable. Okay. And that issue that you look at is that they're going out saying, people blame the media. But when you look at social media and you take a look at the comments that are being made, the things that are being posted, let's see who we can embarrass. Let's see who got ripped off, who got murdered. Let's see if we can take an absolute family tragedy and turn it into the joke of the week. Okay, this is what is happening on the individual base with people, just common people like yourselves, and I don't know if you're involved in it. Okay, and there's no way it could, for that matter. You can't possibly know whether I'm involved in it. Okay, but and my reassurance that I won't do it, you get to figure that one out. Okay, but it's the common people that are spreading this kind of toxicity. If we desire society to land on its feet and to go back to some of these basic values, and I was talking the other day about humanity, or rather the lack thereof. If we've got any desire to bring that kind of caring, that kind of communication back, it starts with the individual. It starts with the idea of what are you doing to change that happening around you. Okay, are you taking responsibility for your actions? If the answer is no, if you're not taking responsibility for your actions, then frankly, you're part of the problem. Okay, this is why when I started working with this other company, when I was talking to them, I said, look, I'm not spending any more money. It's just not happening. Okay, I require results because I've spent I roughly gauged it the other day, and I've spent in excess of $10,000, which means 4 months income. Okay, and I'm talking 4 months gross income. Okay, I've spent about $10,000. Okay, my apologies, that would be 4 months net income on talking to people and paying people to do exactly what they say they will. And it hasn't worked out that way. Now, of course, from my standpoint, I've got hiccups in my past as well. I'm not perfect by any functional stretch. Okay, but if we're going to change this world, we have to start communicating with each other and working in unison towards the same goals. The reality is if you've got a 10-foot table, 10 feet long and 4 feet wide, one person's not moving it. Two people can with a lot of work, but you're likely going to need probably 6 people to move it comfortably. And of course, it's even more so if you're going to put stuff on top of it. Now, at that point, you've got 6 people around a table. If you're working together, you can move a staggering amount of weight, a staggering amount of volume. But if those 6 people are fighting with each other over which way they're going to go, over who's going to lead the direction, and they're not going to pay attention to the situation at hand, what you've got is a mess on your hands. Okay, I remember working years ago. Okay, and the guy that got moved into the supervisory position, he wanted the banquet set up. Now, I'd already been doing banquets for years, and I went to set the plates out. Okay, and so I looked at, because it was just folding legs on these tables, 8 feet to 8 foot tables, right? I'm sure you've seen them at banquets. So I set the first batch. I have plates. I set down just right at the legs. And I set the first one down on the edge so we could get 3 across. Okay, well, when the boss come out with the 4th stack, he went to set it outside the first one. Closer to the end of the table. Now, bear in mind, there's nothing on the other end of the table. And he went to set it on the outside, and I looked at him and I said, you can't do that, boss. You've got to put that on the inside of the table. Now, I'm just an employee. He was my supervisor. And he goes, look, I know exactly what I'm doing. You do it my way because I'm the one in control. And I went, okay. So I let him set it down. And when I brought the 5th stack out, okay, I told him, I said, this is a bad idea. We've got to put it inside. He says, look, I want it set up right next to the other one. So now we've got all of the plates with no weight on the other end of the table. All the plates are set outside the leg. Okay. So I sat down, I stood there. Right. And because he was getting the last stack of plates. And I stood there and watched him, and I went, okay. Didn't say a word. I'm just standing there. There's millionaires all over the place. I was working in a country club. And I watched him, and he goes to put the last stack down. Again, I told him, boss, if you put that down there, we have a disaster on our hands. He goes, I know what I'm doing in front of everybody. I'm the one in charge here. I know what I'm doing. This is where it gets set. So I went, okay. Stopped arguing the point, and he set the stack down. And he looks in, and of course he turns around. I'm standing on top of the stairs. I haven't moved. And he looks at me and goes, why aren't you going and getting the rest of the stuff? And all I did was I stood there, and I just went like this, pointed over his shoulder behind him. And he turns and looks, and the table's just coming up off the end. Okay. And he goes to run for it. Well, he didn't make it before the leg buckled. And we lost out of that stack. And there were 150 stoneware plates. Out of that, we managed to save 4. That was it. Well, he immediately turns to me and starts to try and tear a strip off me. He goes, why didn't you run and stop it? I said, because you're the boss and you wanted it done that way. And I did try and warn you, right? And you wouldn't listen, right? You had in your mind that was what was to be done. Well, there's your result. Now, fortunately, in this case, I happen to know I had enough plates to deal with the banquet anyway. But as people, if we're going to unify this world, we have to realize that just because somebody is younger than you or holds a position in the company you're working in at a lower level than you does not mean their input will not be of use. Okay, this is something that we have to take a look at and go, how are we going to turn this around? Is it going to be by sitting back and waiting for somebody else to decide it? Or is it going to be by talking to each other? Okay, I was out at a restaurant yesterday, and somebody in their company truck, okay, parked across 4 parking stalls. Okay, which means they've parked over 4 parking stalls. I know some of you people have seen this. Okay, when a passerby stopped and asked them about it and says, look, you're taking up 4 stalls. This isn't going to work well. The guy tore a strip off them and said, mind your own business. Okay. Now, how's that for advertising for your company? What it basically said was whoever this company was, they don't care about people. Okay. And this, unfortunately, I find in many companies. And then they wonder why they have troubles. Okay. And I've mentioned this before. 1973, the Carpenters wrote a song called Up, Up with People. And it pretty much says it all. If you haven't heard it before, I do encourage you to go back and listen to it. But if we're going to make this world a better place, we are going to have to, good afternoon, world. How you doing? If we're going to make this place a better world for virtually everybody, we've got to start working together. We've got to start treating each other as decent people, like treat people the way you desire to treat them. That is how unity is attained, not by making people feel like you stand over them. The only reason I've found viable to look down on another person is if you happen to be shorter and happen to be taller than them. Now, if you're taller than somebody, absolutely look down on the people around you. You're going to have a hard time not. Okay. So, I'm quite happy with the way things are setting. Now, the nice part about it is I'm quite willing to acknowledge I don't know jack about the computers, at least not functioning. I can't get them to do what I want at the best of times. Okay. But I've got somebody working on it at this point. So they're setting up an Amazon store for me where I will be able to get the books onto Amazon properly, where I'm handling the shipping and where I'm handling making sure the order goes out. Now, I don't know how well this is going to work to start with, but for the moment, it's a pretty cut and dried issue. Okay. The people that set it up before have, like I said, I've been having troubles getting them to do what was necessary to start with. However, when it comes out of my store, and this is just literally an assumption at this point. I've been told this is the way it works, but until it's up and running in the next couple of weeks, I won't know for certain until I've had a chance to see what happens. Okay. But what I have come to the understanding of is when you're striving to do something, you've got to understand how you treat people is the way people are going to see you. That's what they're going to come to expect. Okay. I mean, you take a look now. I've met some of you. I don't know if I've ever actually met. I don't know whether I've ever met Chad from on here in person. I've met Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio. Okay, and I can tell you with him, you see him smiling all the time. Obviously, he'll have bad days. But every time I've run into him on the radio or in person, he's always got a smile on his face. Okay, and this is what you remember about him. The fact that he treats people decently. Okay, I do my best to, but I became reclusive a long time ago, and I'm having a lot of trouble finding a reason to break out of that. Every time I get out in public right now, if I'm not working, too many people just drive me right up the wall, as in there's too much going on. Okay. I will not argue with you there, world. As a matter of fact, I'll back up on that thought. But, I get out in public. If I'm not actually working, then I run into major problems. Now, it was funny. I was talking to the people that are handling my own website right now. They're handling wtith.com. And I'm getting a staggering number of the automated bots coming in, looking, making contact with me through my contact form. Well, I phoned them up and said, what can we do about this? And they went, nothing. And I got off the phone and went, but all you have to do is put a subroutine into your program. I don't know how to do this. But for those of you that do know how to do this, okay, whatever your contact form subroutine is, absolutely put something in it that scans for the word bot or robot. Okay, and have that shut down the program, so shut down their ability to contact you. The problem you having bots getting in through your contact form is now dealt with. It won't cure it, but it'll sure cut down on the numbers. And sooner or later, somebody will come up with a new name to work it. Because I still get scams. So many people are contacting me telling me SIN number has been canceled. Okay, to what end? Aside from, and I do encourage you again, this is something that applies to all of us. As long as you have a computer. If you don't have a computer, this won't make any difference to you at all. Of course, in all fairness, if you don't have a computer, you're not listening to me. Okay. But if you've got a computer, then all you have to realize is that the only reason when people are sending you emails and asking you to hit a hot link, the reality of it is this. Double check the origin, no matter how real that email looks. Double check the email it's coming from. I cannot tell you the number of times coming from Amazon, coming from TELUS, which is a phone company I work with. Okay, coming from Rogers. Can't tell you how many times I get emails from these people going, your account's in trouble. We need you to hit this link to upgrade, to update. Okay. Check the incoming email. because where it came, the originating email. Because what you'll find is many times they've got an address that has nothing to do with the company that you're dealing with. Nothing at all. Okay. And again, this is something that applies to all of us, no matter how much money you've got, no matter how many people you know, no matter who you voted for. It applies to all of you. Okay. Every single one of you is in exactly the same boat. Now, we can continue focusing on the positive side, or we can focus on the negative side. That is entirely up to you guys. But unity is attained by working together, by actually getting, putting the effort in to communicate with each other in a clear and honest fashion. Now, from my standpoint, it boils down to this. Okay, I'm looking at that, but I've got another neat little situation. I take a look at what's going on in life, and of course, while I'm doing my writing, I'll turn around and I'll look up information to find out, the way it was done or a proper word for it. Okay, and I try and include it as I do my best to include the reality of the situation or of the terms. Like, for instance, when I was looking to see what do you call it when you've got a whole group of various birds when you've got a whole group of various birds from multiple species, what do you call it? Okay, so I could use the appropriate term in my writing. Okay, I did the same thing with a bunch of various animals from various different species. Now, we have to realize here, I used to have a problem with this. I kept looking at humans. People kept saying they're a different race. So I went and did the research because it didn't make sense to me. Turns out, Black people, Chinese people, the Japanese people, the Europeans, the Caucasian people, are all, and the Middle Easterns. You're all different races, absolutely. But you're all the same species. And that is the thing you have to look at. Okay. Now, we also have to look at, and I take things a little too literally, so what I'm about to say is likely to annoy some of you. Okay. And I'd apologize, but that would indicate that I felt I was wrong or that I made a mistake. When you look at gender, okay, the human species is a binary system. Now, some of the new doctors have now come out and said, oh, by the way, there's actually 5 genders. There's 5 genders of humans. And I run into a little bit of a problem. Like I said, maybe I'm taking things too literally. Okay. But take a look at the anatomical configuration. Okay. There's a gender for you. Now, from my standpoint, there's 2. What you relate to, what minor differences you have. If I'm going to look at that, then you break it down the rest of the way. Okay. That's just the reality behind it. At least from my standpoint. So we've got, people are finding new and exciting ways. I know in England, I was sent a friend of mine. I sent a ticket stub, an admission stub from a live event. And over there, apparently you have to fill out all this stuff to go to a live event. Little heavy on the security, but so what? If it helps keep people safe, great. The problem I had with it was on that stub, they had 52 genders. Okay. Now, if a race has 52 genders, you can see there's going to be a bit of a problem here with reproduction. Okay. But they had 52 individual genders, and that was stopping at T. Okay. So you're looking at, if you continue that kind of ratio, you're looking at somewhere close to 30, maybe 35 genders in the human species. Now, does this make any functional sense? And if you're going to do that, then we've got the added problem of, okay, we need a different washroom for every gender. It used to be male and female. And now we've got 52. So we're going to go into an entire, and you want everybody to have their own bathroom. That's great. But now you've got 52 bathrooms in every store. Is this even remotely practical? Okay, when we're looking at unity, we have to stop looking at how to make things separated, how to make bigger differences. Okay, Christianity, and look it up on the net. Okay, do not take my word for it. Look it up on the net. Now I know some genius out there is going to say I was pushing this. What I'm pushing is look it up on the net. Okay, but my research found that the unified Christian faith had 45,000 denominations worldwide. Okay, now this is not what I call unified. The Jewish faith had 3, and the Muslim faith had 2. Now, which one is a more unified version? Okay, now I don't personally see any one of them as the be all and end all. I call myself a Christian for one reason. I believe wholeheartedly in God. I believe wholeheartedly in Jesus Christ and the fact that he arrived. Okay. Do I believe what the Bible says? Yeah, no. There's a lot of truth in it. Okay. But I've spotted discrepancies. I haven't gone through the Quran and through the various other Bibles. Okay. But there are some pretty severe discrepancies that I have come across. Okay. And these are the people that are supposed to be guiding this world into a unified approach, promoting fear, promoting segregation, promoting, I'm better than you. God said I'm better than you. God didn't say that anybody was better than anybody. What God did was said, go forth and multiply. And if you really desire to get to know things, get along. Okay, you've got the choice of being nice. You've got the choice of being bad. Here's the outcomes. They lead to 2 different places. You get to pick. Now, you've got freedom of choice. You don't have freedom from consequence. If you are one of these people that desires this world to become unified, if you desire things like, for instance, especially in the UFO community, full disclosure, then you've got to start treating people, especially people in the same community that you're in. Okay, you really have to start treating them as equals. I can't tell you the number of times. Now, myself, I'm heterosexual. Okay, meaning, for those of you that have forgotten, meaning I prefer women. Okay, that's just the way that is. Okay, but I have been exposed to the gay community. I found it something really remarkable, and they've got all the, instead of calling it a word, they've got all these little letters stuck together, and amongst them, they fight with themselves as to who is gay and who isn't. Okay, if you're going to claim to be part of a community, it's time to start putting that community together. It's time to start promoting the idea that we have similarities and we do have differences. But when we focus on the similarities, that's what will draw unification. That is what will get people working together. Okay, if you're trying to drive a wedge between people, carry on. You're doing a wonderful job. Look what happened in Rome. That worked like a charm. Okay, they treated the lesser income people as though they were absolutely garbage. Now with that in mind, if you're aiming at tearing the civilization apart and destroying it, the path mankind is on right now is working like an absolute charm. Okay, I watched a video the other day, and these teenagers, they couldn't have been older than 12, 13 years old, were complaining about wasted food, which is a good thing to waste about. Well, I will absolutely agree with you in that world. I haven't looked into all the breaks, but I can assume, it's a reasonable bet that with 45,000 discrepancies, different denominations, they've thrown half the important stuff out. Now, the reality, I'm going to throw a wrench in right there. They have one thing in common that never made any sense to me. Okay, when you take a look at the Last Supper, they show Christ sitting at the head of a table. Now, that does not make any sense to me. Okay, and I don't have proof of it. Okay, but I will tell you this. When you look at that, Christ never saw himself as better than anybody. So why would he sit at the head of the table? First of all. Second of all, considering the same stories tell that he washed the feet of the women. Okay, why are there no women at the table? And how, pray tell, was he going to wash their feet if he was at the table? You can't reach their feet. Certainly not from his chair to theirs. Okay. The other problem is he sat down on the ground most of the time to eat because he sat with the people that he was dealing with. The sick, the poor, the people that were downtrodden. Okay. Now, I take a look at that and go, there's something that's being very badly misguided here. Okay. But it's not just from the Christian faith. It's not just from any one of the faiths. Okay. I take a look at the laws that are being passed on any political front. You listen to the stuff coming out of the States. Now, I don't pay attention to politics on the whole. Okay. But if you go back 50 years, well, 70 now, if you go back into the 1950s, the values that the Republicans held were the same held then are what the Democrats are holding now, and vice versa. Yeah, and I agree with you there, World. Let's face it, most of them paint Jesus as being white. Yeah, somehow there's a problem there. Okay. But with that in mind, and I'm not going to get sidetracked onto that too terribly far, but when you take a look at the way you're treating people, find the common denominator. Many people will not be able to do certain talents. Okay. There are certain things that they're just not going to be able to do. So do not expect them to do that. My brother used to want to, before, like when he was younger, he really wanted to become a pilot. But his eyesight wouldn't work for it. So they said, no, you can't become a pilot because your eyes are damaged. Okay. They didn't say you can't become a pilot because you don't have the right income. They just went, your eyes don't work. Okay. Now, that is a good reason to limit some of what people do. Okay. This doesn't mean they can't necessarily do it. And this is where technology has come in really nicely in a lot of cases. But we have to take a look at the way the world is and go, are we actually on the right track? Are we treating people the way that we desire to be treated? Are you encouraging people to interact with each other in a positive fashion? If the answer is yes, this is fantastic. If the answer is no, it may be time to start really looking at what you're doing. Okay. Now, one of the things I've been looking into the society norms for, I've mentioned that everything is connected. Now, in the final book I'm writing, The Return to Paradise, in order to lay that out properly, I've got to have, in my eyes, a working model that I can work with and that I can point out. Okay, that can be written properly into the storyline. Okay, this is one of the reasons why I've started looking at some of this stuff a little bit more readily. Yes, it is science fiction, science fantasy. Yes, the latter years, which is the fourth trilogy in the saga, is post-apocalyptic. Okay, but it is aiming towards giving mankind a restart all over again. Okay, but in order to do that, I had to come to a comprehensible understanding of where society went sour. And where it went sour is we've misplaced humanity. In other words, that caring, that uplifting, that supportive aspect of helping each other, of talking to each other, that has been misplaced. It's not gone. It can be rekindled. It just requires focusing on it a little more once again. Okay. And this is why I'm looking at it now, so that I can get it written into the storyline properly. Because the thing with writing, the thing with running a business, the thing with running a household, it has to be internally consistent. You've got to make sure that inside the picture that you're building, that it actually adds up. Okay. If you're going to claim that a belief structure that you're living by is a certain way, like from my standpoint, I call myself a spiritual guide. And when I talk about treating everybody equally, I absolutely do. If somebody is regardless of their background, regardless of how they got to where they are, if I agree with them, I will tell them so. If I don't agree with them, their station in life doesn't amount to much. Okay. This is just the way I am. And I'm not, from my standpoint, do I apologize for it? No. I love the way that one person put it. They were forced to apologize. Okay. And what had happened, and no, I'm not going to tell you anybody's name, but what had happened was they had called their brother. They were just a young teenager at the time. And he was an older teenager. And this individual turned around and called their brother stupid. Well, the mother turned around and forced an apology. Okay. Said, you must apologize to your brother. So, you must apologize. So after a little bit of arguing back and forth, the individual turned around and looked at the brother and went, I'm sorry you're so stupid. Right. Now, it was an apology. Right. I don't get the feeling it was quite what the apology was supposed to be. From my standpoint, whenever I got forced to apologize for something I didn't agree with, I didn't feel I should have apologized for, okay, I'd simply look at the person and go, please accept my most insincere apology to date. Okay. And I carry on. It was an apology, absolutely, but it may have missed the mark. But like I said, I've never been known to be overly soft-spoken, and I certainly don't have that filter. That filter that people have that says, oh, I shouldn't say that? Well, mine usually comes out a little behind schedule and goes, well, I really shouldn't have said that. But, from my standpoint, it simply boils down to, when I'm asked a question, I will give you an honest answer. This is the way I'm seeing the world. And where it comes to unity, if we are going to rebuild this world, if we're going to get it to carry on, we've got all these people trying to get off the planet, wondering when God's going to come back and repair the damage, when the aliens are going to come in and go, oh, we want to see what's going on. When are they going to fix the mess? I know a lot of children that will sit there and go, when are you, mom and dad, when are you going to come in and clean my room? Because I don't feel like it. I made the mess, but I don't feel like doing it. And if you've got kids, the odds are you've run into that. Okay. So it's absolutely imperative at this point that we really take a look at things and go, if you have either through deliberate action or neglect, okay, it is time for you to stand up and go, okay, what have I created? Okay, one things, and I've got a list above me. I was putting it on paper, right? So what I do is I write it when I'm there on paper, a list of things that I have to get done, and then I'll transfer it to disk and keep a running track on it. One of the things I have to do today is, as soon as I get off there and get done with this video, which, by the way, I'll be closing it down inside the next 5 minutes. Okay, but I've got a list of stuff here that I've got to go through and check it off, get it finished, and see how much I can actually deal with. See how much I can actually get accomplished. Because this helps keep me focused. And I do strongly recommend the use of lists to help get your life turned around, because all of this change has to start with you. I cannot change it for you. I can tell you where the hiccups are. I can tell you where I see the complications from every walk of life. It's easy to see from my end. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Am I going to tell you that things are changing or things can be changed if you get off your tail and make it happen? The answer is yes. Now, those of you that are running a podcast, you know better than the rest that if you desire that to work, it's going to take spreading word that you're there. This is done by communication. Okay. Now, from my standpoint, it's a pretty black and white setup. I'm just going in here to see what I'm looking at. Probably not much different. The reality of it is I just wanted to make sure that I was giving solid information. And I can do that on this screen. I just have to wait for it to finish up. But when you're looking to change the world you're in, it is absolutely imperative to remember, whatever your nationality, whatever your background, you're all part of the same species. Now, yes, for those of you in that line of thinking, there are other species on this planet that are just as communicative and are connected to other things. Okay, as in aliens, ancient races, these exist. Okay, which is why I ended up putting this together. Okay, and again, every book that I write is available directly through me. Okay, I do take PayPal, and it all gets dealt with, through the email address used for PayPal is innervoiceenterprises@yahoo.ca. Every one of the books I've got available, which you can see the whole load on rkeithandrews.com. Okay, every one of them I've got in stock. Okay, but if we're going to change this world, you have to start communicating with those close to you and let that effect go and ripple out. Because I will tell you, the way you treat other people will have an effect on their life as well. Okay, and it's up to you whether you're going to treat them in a decent fashion or in a poor fashion. Now, with this in mind, I'm going to bring this to a close. Okay, I'm going to thank you very much for joining me today. And until we meet again, do take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.